wonder how many girls are going to show up today because, when you have the first meeting, you have the excitement and the hype and, everybody's excited to see each other and talk. And then the second week, I'm still excited, but it's like, all right, let's get working. Let's get down to business. Hmm. Okay. So, chapter 2 in our 4 agreements. First off, I just want to go over the word impeccable. Am I saying it right, Becky? Impeccable. Behavior, performance, and appearance. So that was the word that, was throughout chapter 2 to work on. And I also have written down not liable to sin. And I found that definition somewhere. But I think I wrote that down because everybody's their own person in this world. I am completely different than some of you girls. You girls are completely different than me. Everyone's different. So I love, let's go ahead and go to question 1, and then I'll get into this. Question 1 was, what first came to mind when you read the first agreement? So this is our first agreement that we're going to start working on individually on how we can get better. Okay, and it's your own perspective on what you need to change, what you need to work on, how you need to get better. Okay, but we're all trying to become the best version of ourselves, remember, but that is individually, yourself. So I love how it says, because I wrote down not liable to sin for the word impeccable. And it says on page 31, a sin is anything that you do which goes against yourself. Okay? So I don't know if you guys have ever heard the saying, oh my gosh, if I walk into that church, it's going to crumble. But sin is sin. Everybody does it, okay? But it's your own perspective of sin. Even if you're not a believer in God, even if you believe in something else, or you look up to something else, sin is a sin. And that is whatever perspective you put on the sin that you're doing, okay? Why it's hard as, for me as a Christian, this is what I know, so this is what I'm going to talk about. But some people think drinking is a sin. Some people think, not lying, because that is, but just doing different things, gossiping, is a sin. But some other people think having a glass of wine, is fine. But it's your own perspective. Don't allow somebody else to put their perspective on what you're doing is bad. Because what you're doing might help you. What you're doing might empower you through the day. What you're doing might get you through the day. Okay, who says taking medicine or smoking is bad? Who says cuss words are bad is a sin? It's your own perspective. And you have to have confidence to trust your own perspective and your sin and what's right from wrong. We know as an adult women, killing is wrong. Positive words is good. But I just wanted to point that out. That's what I got from this book is everyone's different. Everybody's sin's different. We should not judge each other because they're out partying and drinking and we think it's wrong. Okay, who am I to judge you? No, that's not okay for me to sit back and judge you for what you're doing.
This button.
And that's what I have for question 1. If anybody else wants to share what you got out of chapter 2, or even like a different meaning of impeccable, I would love to hear.
I'll go. I'm sorry. I was having some computer issues. So that impeccability had my mind like reeling the whole time I was reading the chapter. And I actually found myself like flipping back to the first couple of pages to like reread that definition of, because I just found that really interesting. And like you kept saying, it's your perspective of what's right and wrong. And then that just brought me back to your word. Like your perspective could be your word. Your word is your force. And yeah, who are we to judge others? What first came to mind when I read this is that my word is so powerful. And I really like this quote, and it's on page 26. But like a sword with 2 edges, your word can create the most beautiful dream, or your word can destroy everything around you. And holy moly, I had like millions of examples come to mind, many of them negative. But it just made me like automatically like take a look, kind of, think about my actions, think about my words, how they align. And this whole chapter had my mind, like I was connecting to so much of it and trying to find examples in my own life. And yeah, your word is a force, that is for sure. And I learned a lot in this chapter.
I'll go. I think when I think of the word impeccable, I think of perfect. You're like, oh my gosh, that's impeccable. It's perfect. And I've been working really hard on the fact that like nobody is perfect, or that my perfect is going to be different than somebody else's perfect. And so thinking about that with like the sin, like I think in my mind automatically goes to religion when you think of the word sin. But reading this was like, well, no, because I think of my grandfather who was a Methodist minister, and in his mind, alcohol was a sin. You did not drink alcohol. If you drank alcohol, you weren't a good Christian. But I know many people who are good Christians who drink alcohol. And so I had to kind of come to terms with that and think of that like my sin isn't going to be the same as somebody else's. And so reading this, it was like, okay, well, duh. Like it's like I feel like it's that thing that you know, but reading it in words, it like cements it in your heart. And then my mind, I kept thinking about my classroom being a teacher. And on page 28 at the top, it talks about like our mind, fertile ground, and seeds are being continually planted. And when we plant a seed, it grows. And so,
What do you want?
What seed are we planting? And I've talked to my kids about this. That if you are constantly telling yourself that you can't do it, you're right, you can't. But if you say like, you know what, this is hard right now, but I'm going to keep pushing, and I'm going to get better at this, you will. And so I just kept thinking about like that if we plant the right seeds, that we are going to grow the right things. In turn, we're going to grow the right words, whether they're the words that we say to ourselves in our minds or the words that we say to the people around us. So I kept coming back to like that teacher mindset, and then thinking about like, being a mom, like the words that I say to my stepson is huge. So I really enjoyed this chapter. It hit home a lot.
I'll go. So when I first read it, like the first question was, what first came to your mind when you read the first agreement? And it said, the title, Be Impeccable with Your Word. Totally did not take that as being impeccable with my word toward myself. It was being impeccable with my word to other people. Because like, I think we, even as humans, a lot of times, and I tell this to people all the time, we're our own worst enemy. And even in the last chapter where like you are the worst person to yourself than anybody else ever will be, is I will say things to other people that I will not always say to myself. So reading that first one and then starting to read the chapter, I was like, oh shit, he actually means I'm supposed to be impeccable to myself, not other people, because the way that I am to myself, I will reflect onto other people. And I was like, "Oh, okay, I see what you did there." Like, and it really made me think back, which it's funny because it was on like last week and I watched it, and it's a movie I love, is The Help, and how she always tells the little girl, you smart, you kind, you know, you're beautiful, because in her world, she was not told that because her mother did not think that she was smart or that she was pretty. And so that was, you know, Abilene's way of telling her, this is what you are, and to ingrain that into her, that that's what she is, not what her mother's telling her she is. So for me, like that first one, I was like, oh, I'm supposed to do that first, and then it wasn't even like my thought of like, be impeccable with your word. Oh, I'm supposed to talk to people the right way. No, I'm supposed to talk to myself the right way so I can talk to people the right way.
And actually, I'm going to piggyback off of that because one of the things that I highlighted and circled and arrowed was the one that says self rejection is the biggest sin that you commit. So being mean to yourself, basically. And I've always been like, I was made fun of growing up. I mean, I was short and heavier than most, and that's life. And I've always struggled with my weight. So, like, I've always been negative towards myself in that sense. But even like for, when I got married and stuff, like, I was like, I have to lose all this weight. I have to look nice, yada, 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 yada. And even now I catch myself, like, my husband's like, you look so good, or you're working so hard. And I'm like, yeah, I guess I could do better. Like, it's just because it's been ingrained in me for so long that, like, it's not good enough, or you should do this, or, whatever. And that's something that I work on every single day, because I'll be the first person to compliment somebody else. 100%. I'll be the first person to be like, you look great. I'm so proud of you, even as a teacher. But I don't do that for myself very often. Even though I know I've worked hard, like, I don't. And so the biggest sin that I commit every day is when I put my own self down, because I just have this high expectation. So for me, that's one of the things that I got out of it was like, dude, calm down, like, be nice to yourself, because you're doing the best you can, but like we put that spell on ourselves that, like, it's like your word is magic, and it's true. What you say to other people or what you say to yourself is what you're going to believe. And it's the same way in the classroom. Like, I have this little girl who, she drives me crazy, and she's gotten 4 laptops, and she stabs every one of them, and she doesn't do her homework, but every day she comes in, I'm like, I'm so happy to see you, which I am, but like, I know that she has no positive influence anywhere else. So all the things I want to say, I hold back, because I know, like, she doesn't get that positive, voice or conversation. So I think to myself, you put all that effort into telling your students things that are positive and to get them through the day, or your friends or your husband or your family, and here I am like, oh, I need to work out twice today because I didn't burn enough calories the time before that, or this shirt is a little bit doesn't fit right, so I need to, like, yeah. So that was kind of my thing, was like, it starts with yourself. And I am the first one to not start with myself.
And I'm going to piggyback off of that one. I actually had a friend tell me the other day, she goes, oh, you are looking amazing. And I'm like, oh yeah, it's just because I think I shoved myself in my pants. And I'm like, oh, why did I do that? I totally devalued myself. And instead of giving myself the credit that I am working hard, I think it was, I didn't want to make somebody else feel bad. So instead of making them feel bad, I'm making myself feel. And I did, as soon as I said it, I'm like, why did I do that? Because I have worked hard and I am doing great work. But yeah, that stung when I realized what it is that I had done. And I don't know if I would have noticed what it is that I did if I wouldn't have read this. But the other thing for this chapter that came to mind was kill them with kindness. I never really knew what that meant other than just being nice and being kind. But like it says, that what you put out there is what you're pretty much giving back to yourself. So
I love that you shared that, Nicole. Yes, kill them with kindness. That didn't come to mind, and it totally should have. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. One of the quotes that came to my mind was, "We are what we think," which we've all kind of said in a different way, and it's so true that like yeah, and I do think being truthful with yourself and speaking the right words to yourself is way harder than yeah, like because as a teacher I can remember making it a point to when every student or if there was like a troublesome student that walked in the door, my first thing was a compliment and I made sure because yeah, those kinds of things affect other people and help them make agreements in their own mind, but why is it so dang hard to do it for ourselves?
I think that's the one thing with like killing with kindness. When we did Fierce Friday the other day, and I said my smile because I smile a lot of work, and I will a lot of times I can be very tactful in what I do. Like I will smile at them, I will give them whatever they want to hear, and it kills them because a lot of times like I know I vent to you guys like, oh my gosh, they pushed my button or I just wanted to do this, but I don't give them that satisfaction. And I know it irritates them even more. So for me, that is the thing, like kill them with kindness. Like don't let them see that it gets to you a lot of times. But I am that person too that like I'll give somebody a major compliment, but somebody compliments me and I'm like, "Ee." And I think why we do it is we don't want to seem selfish. We don't want to seem self-involved, I guess would be the word to say, of like, yeah, I know I look good. Like, I'll take the compliment, but I mean, behind the screen, even anybody compliments me, I'm like, oh my God. Like, ooh, like, what do I say to that? Like, what do I say to a compliment? Because I've never been somebody that takes compliments well. Like, I don't know how to respond to them besides being like, oh yeah, I know. Like, but I think it's just in that agreement of talking to yourself and being like, yes, look at you. And I think that it's one thing that I've really worked on a lot of looking at myself in the mirror and being like, you are an amazing person. You have done hard work. You do hard work every day. You're not only challenging yourself physically, but mentally. I have more so in the past few years challenged myself more mentally than physically to change that mindset just of things like growing up. I mean, we lived in a house trailer my entire life. Kids are fucking assholes. Adults are assholes. And they ingrain that into your mind of you are never going to be somebody. You live in a trailer. Like I was called so many things. To get out of that mindset as an adult and grow up, now I'm like, yeah, well, I'm going to prove you wrong. Look what I have now. I did not turn to the person you thought I was going to be. So
And I love it.
Tessa.
Yeah. I love that you guys are sharing that. Because it is hard to even remember to talk positive to ourselves. I love that Jenny has posted or wrote on her mirrors throughout her house to remind herself to speak of those positive words, to speak encouraging thoughts and feelings into ourselves. So maybe that's something that I would encourage you guys to do. Even print it off at school, print some little words, even just one single word: beautiful, smart, fun, unique, and just put them around your house. Like when you open up the cabinet door, there it is, So I encourage you, if you're not doing enough self-talk, positive self-talk, maybe that's something to do. I know that we do our self-development and read and stuff like that, but it is hard. You almost feel ridiculous when you stand in front of a mirror and you look into the mirror and say, I'm beautiful, you kind of feel weird about it, but it is something that we need to start doing. So maybe just those little words around the house or on your mirror, something like that. And I love that you guys shared. That's awesome. Becky,
Wait,
Go ahead.
I like to share something real quick.
Okay.
When it was said earlier that, your own worst enemy, and I have been told that by my boss, who fully believes that I am very capable of doing my job, and I am learning that I am more capable than what I give myself credit for. But what struck me with even that thought, that phrase, is my older son, Lucas, is a very strong-willed personality. And I have noticed over the years that I have said that to him. He doesn't give himself, he's a very, very capable, strong young man. And because growing up, he was a very strong personality, he put a lot of people off. He is now an adult. He's 25 years old. He is serving our country. God bless him. Both my boys are. So I'm very proud of that. And I'm proud of that for them. But I see that in him. I see that he is so hard on himself, and he is his own worst enemy when he criticizes himself. And when I read this, I thought, oh my gosh, I did that to him because I was so hard on myself and am very hard on myself. I think without even realizing it, I put that out there to him. Growing up, he was my first child. I kept him alive. That was an accomplishment, it's like, but no, he has turned out to be a wonderful young man, and he is very opinionated. He is very strong-willed. He is very much his own person, and that's great. But I see that in him. I do. I see that he is so hard on himself, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I did that. But I can't change it now. All I can do is hope and pray that, he sees in himself what other people see in him. But yeah, that is so powerful that you don't. So even when you're putting yourself down, you got to be so careful because other people are watching you put yourself down. And I've noticed that in him. But now my other son isn't quite like that, so I must have been okay. but yeah, that just really got to me, when you really have to be careful how you treat yourself and talk to yourself, because other people are watching that. And it's like when you give yourself permission to be negative to yourself, then you're almost giving others permission. Like if you don't feel good enough about yourself to treat yourself with kindness, then you're giving other people permission, to not treat you with kindness. And that really hit home because I see that in my older son, and that just really got to me. So I just wanted to put that out there.
That's great. Thank you for sharing. It is hard with kids. Very hard. I actually pulled my son aside this week and I said, you will repeat after me. Because he was in a very lost, he was very lost and not feeling like himself and just very down about his grandpa. And I said, listen, you'll repeat after me. And I spoke positive words. And he looked at me. He looked at me and he said, wow, Mom, I feel so much better. And that's sometimes we have to teach our kids that. We have to pull them aside and say, repeat after me, because I know what positive words do for me. So I know how they're going to affect my kids. And he's only 8 years old. And he's already struggling with his emotions at 8 years old and not knowing how to handle them. So the sooner we catch it, the sooner we do it with our loved ones, the better. If we can go ahead and take a screenshot, Tessa, if you're able to get that with our books, I'd like to hold our books up before we go into question number 2.
I won't hold it in my teeth this week.
Yeah.
All right. Are we ready? 1, 2, 3. Okay, got it.
Awesome, thank you.
Yep.
Question number 2.
How is your word your gift? Let me start us off, but I really want to hear from other people. So how is your word your gift? For me, like on just a really surface level, I immediately thought of language because I was a Spanish teacher. And so, sorry, it's everything I always bring back to Spanish. But my word in that regard is my gift. You know, I'm able to communicate with other people that, you know, some people can't. And I've always been really proud of that. And I think I've always grown up just trying to be really empathetic towards others and understanding that everybody's word is their own. And like, just because you can't speak the same language as somebody else, it doesn't make them weird. It just means you grew up into a completely different environment. So on a really like surface level, that was kind of what I thought to that question. But on a deeper level, how is my word my gift? I mean, it's literally what controls like my entire life, you know? And you know, just the way that we speak to our children, the way that we speak to ourselves, like you have your word and you can do what you want with it. So it can be your gift or it can be your demise. And so yeah, I don't know. I had a lot of thoughts about that question, but I want to hear from you all.
Becky, I'm going to kind of go off of that as well. I've been saying since probably Caroline's been little, and I've even used it with my students and tell them to use the power of their words before I even knew that was really a thing. I just figured, you know, it's just speak and, you know, kind of tell people what you're feeling. And kind of going off of yesterday, or not yesterday, but the last time we got together, with kind of that, how I was feeling like I wasn't good enough for like my mother-in-law and things like that. And I actually spoke it yesterday. And I spoke it to my husband because he'd seen it and witnessed it again. And I told him, I said, you know what? I said, I'm a good daughter-in-law. And I said, I would be happy to have somebody like me as a daughter-in-law. And I spoke it. And I said, I'm not going to believe that I'm not good enough, because I said, I am. And I said, I'm not going to allow that. And after I said it, I think I felt better, but I felt better because I got rid of that negative energy. And like they said, it comes back to me as stronger energy. So I let it go. So I'm hoping that the next time that we get together, because it kind of fell apart yesterday and the kids saw it, and I felt really bad that the kids saw it. But I'm hoping, you know, that it'll get better. So that's what I have to say.
Nicole, I love that you said that. Rather than being like, why doesn't she like me? Why does she always treat me bad? Why doesn't mom? And then you spiral with all these things that you could have done or should have done to make her happy and all stuff. And still you went, wait a minute. I'm like a really good person. Like I would die to have a daughter-in-law like me. That's her problem if she has an issue with this amazing person sitting right here. Like, I love that you allowed yourself to like flip that, because how many times do we not allow ourselves to do that? We think, oh my gosh, why don't they like me? What did I do wrong? Da, da, da. And you spiral and you try to think, how can I make it up to her? How can I continue to impress her? Nope, not anymore. Not anymore, especially if she doesn't respect you as you are now. Why does she deserve more from you? Like that, you know what I mean? Like what, like save that goodness for somebody that deserves it and somebody that's going to value it and appreciate it. Why would we continue trying to impress somebody that doesn't, no matter what we do, it's never going to impress them. So why do we continue putting ourselves in that? So I love, and no matter how many years it took, you're here, you know, like that's the awesome thing, is sometimes it takes us years to let that go to impress that certain person or that certain, you know, experience or something. But it's cool to be here, isn't it? To be like, wow, I don't have to impress her anymore. Like it almost just kind of sets you free, right? Like it gives you that ability to just say, I don't need to do that anymore. And I just think that's really cool. So I just wanted to like appreciate that for you real quick.
So I think as far as like our gift, like our word is our gift from a coaching perspective, is definitely an angle I took on it. And how, you know, all of us, I think, if we are coaches, are probably like our challengers are who we used to be years ago. You know what I mean? So like where we've gotten to now, it's because of a lot of the self-talk we've had or support from each other. So I think that like using our word to support them and bring them along with us and to help grow, I think it's definitely a perspective I took on it. And also just, there was one more point that I had that I totally blanked on just now. And it was a really good one. It's even better than the first one. Dang it. If I think of it again, I'll bring it back up. But yeah, definitely like as coaches, just using our word, you know, to help inspire people. God, I really try to avoid that word for all the Mel Robbins reasons, you know, inspire and motivate, but, and to just be intentional. That was the other point I wanted to bring up, is being intentional with our word, I think is really important. When we're engaging with ourselves, but also when we're engaging with, again, if you're a coach, you know, your challengers, and just the little things like, I have to do something, like, and viewing it as I get to do something, or I need to do this, and saying, I want to do this, you know, and it's just the little even tweaks like that. I think it just goes to show like how powerful words can be. So just like to take a moment and really be thoughtful and intentional when you're communicating with everybody, including yourself, you know. And I think Nicole, like, I think it was Nicole who brought up, you recognized that negative self-talk that you had immediately, but like, that's huge progress because you wouldn't have done that a month, 2 months ago, you know, whatever. So I think, yeah, I think that's super important to recognize too, so.
I think also along the lines of like your word is your gift, is that is going back to like how we speak to ourselves. Our kids see how we speak to ourselves. So especially like, I mean, I'm not a girl mom, I'm a boy mom, but as a, you know, like, I mean, I remember growing up, like my mom was always so hard on herself of like, oh, I've gained weight, or I've done this, or I've done that. And that gets ingrained to you. And I think just, I don't have girls, but I have boys. I want my boys, when they grow up, to teach their wives the way that I think that they should teach their wives. I want to teach them to be good husbands, to give their wives compliments of, you look really good in that, or hey, you know, just telling them, I hope you have a great day, or sending them an I love you message, to be able to be that. And I think a lot of times, like in our world, we think doing that with boys makes them weak. And it doesn't make them weak. I think it makes them stronger. It makes them a better man. And I want to be able to teach that to them. So for me to be able to let them see what a confident woman looks like, makes them realize when they find that confident woman, or they find that woman that's not confident, that I give them those gifts of those words to be able to use to make her confident, to make her feel confident, to change what her mind sees and feels. And I think that's one thing that we just, you know, even as parents, we don't realize, and it's hard being a parent, is our kids are different. And going back to I'm a person that's very hard on myself. I will admit, I'm the same at work. Like some people will be like, you are so capable of doing this. And I'm like, I don't think I'm capable of doing that. And it, like, even with this group, it pushes me out of my comfort zone of thinking like, well, I can't do that. And then I think, well, she did that, why can't I do that? And I literally had one of those thoughts yesterday of like, well, no, if like she can do it, I can do it. But I see that in my kids, is our kids have their own personalities. Like we are one person, our husband is one person, and my husband is one person, but we have 3 kids. Their personalities are all the same. They're all different. They're not the same. So it's trying to figure that out, as what that personality of that child is. Like Bryce, my oldest, is he's an introvert. He's very quiet. He's shy, but he loves to get outside of that and do things, but it takes him a long time to do it. Caleb is like a very outgoing, he's the social butterfly, like has no doesn't care. He will like talk to anybody, anywhere. He'll do anything, no fear. Jackson is kind of a combination of that. Like he has his times when he can be a very social person, but he has his times when he's very much an introvert. And that's very much me. So trying to learn those things and how our words are used against that, like I really sit and think of times of how I need to present things to Bryce to be like, you know, buddy, I really think that you should try that. Like at least go try it. Like I think you'll be surprised of how you do it. And it's almost like talking him into it, but it's using my words of doing that. But it's going to set them up later in life for how they treat people and how they talk to people, or you know, when they are married and they have a wife and how they're going to treat her and talk to her. You know, I don't want to be so hard and critical on myself that when they grow up and they see their wife doing it, like they're just okay with it, because it's not okay. Like it's not okay to let her tear herself down when you can be that person in her corner that is pulling her up. So I think that's how like I see my gift is not just how I'm giving it to myself, but the gift of the word that I'm giving to my kids to encourage them in life to then give that gift to other people. Because I talk to them all the time and they're like, oh, you know, so-and-so, a kid at school, and, you know, people were picking on him or whatever. And I'm like, you better not. You better not have been one of those kids. Like, you better be friends with that kid. You tell that kid, like, he's nice. I don't care what compliment you give him for the day or her for the day. Like, I'm like, smash, Hulk smash. Don't do that. But I mean, and that is, you know, how we're doing it, because in other kids' homes, that's probably what they see and that's what they hear. And they hear parents, you know, tearing other kids down or, you know, tearing other adults down. And I don't want to be that person. That is not how I want to project my word onto my kids.
Tessa, I love that. I actually, I challenge my kids sometimes to go to school, find one person, find a teacher, an adult, compliment them, tell them that you like their shirt, and then find a kid and compliment them. Tell them you like something, you like their shoes. So, and then they come home and I'm like, did you do it? And they're all excited about it. She's like, yeah, Mom, my teacher really liked that. It really, it put a smile on their face. Like I encourage my kids to do that as well. That's awesome. I love it. I wanted to share real quick. It's kind of a different perspective on how the word is my gift. And it on page 27, it says he activated people's fear with the word. I feel like my gift on this earth and at this time is my positive vibes, my encouraging words, my uplifting. And in the first chapter, how it talks about what are you creating? Is it hell or heaven? Is it enslaved or is it free? Is it black magic or is it pure magic? And I feel like for me, it's all of the positive things that I'm creating in this world. So when my sister calls me freaking out about the pandemic or about the president or what's happening in this world, it is what it is. Like, what positivity can you add instead of negative words on social media? What can you put out there that's positive and funny, or something that's going to lift people's spirits instead of adding fear to this world? And I feel like I do pretty well at trying to add positivity into other people, into the world, into my kids. So yeah, that's my gift. My word gift is being positive and uplifting. So.
And I also want to add to that. I also went, I don't know if you guys know the Long Island medium, Teresa Caputo, but I went to one of her shows and she even mentioned, we're not supposed to say it is what it is, because it is actually very negative. So what I like what you said with that, what positive spin can you put on it to make it positive? Instead of just saying, well, it is what it is. Because I would say that when she said that we're not supposed to do that, I stopped that.
And I'm bad about that. I do that a lot. And it's, you know, when you said about fear, and putting that out there. Last week I had lunch with a high school friend of mine, and we were talking a lot about, how everyone's so afraid of this pandemic and everything, and how the social media, like you said, is putting, that out there, that fear out there. And I said, the thing is, if we would look at this differently, if we would look at what we can do, instead of what we can't control, there's a lot that we can't control. But if the social media, or even just ourselves, would look at what we can do, like simple things, like when I do my laundry, I put the laundry additive in there that kills the germs. Does it kill the germs? I hope so. But even if it doesn't, that's making me feel like I'm doing something. I have control over my laundry. I have control over killing those germs. If they would focus more on what you can control, what you can do to make yourself feel better or make someone else feel better, that is so much more powerful than fear. And just think what this world would be like right now during this pandemic if we would focus on what we can control, what we can do. Lysol your house. If that makes you feel good and that's giving you the power, do it. What is it hurting? Put the Lysol additive in your laundry. Is it hurting anything? No. Is it helping? I hope so. It probably is. At least it's something that makes you feel good and not helpless. And, so anyway, that's my 2 cents.
I'll say to that real quick. You know what? One of the best things I did in 2020, I stopped watching the news. When I had my hysterectomy in May, I stopped watching the news because I knew I was going to be home for about 8 weeks, and I would have went to a very, very negative space. We did our whole Wario thing on the Monday. We got together, we talked, we discussed, we did all that. But the best thing I ever did was stop watching the news, because my husband will come home some nights right now and he'll turn the news on and it lasts for about 15 seconds. And I'm like, okay, done with that. Turn that off. Done with it. Don't want to listen to it. If I want to know something, I go look it up and I research it and I find out it myself. That, like, I see some people going around and they are so fearful. Fear has been driven into them with the word so much, and all the negativity and the scare tactics and this and that and blah, blah, blah. And it's all negative. There's nothing positive. And I'm just like, you know what? Peace out. Don't need you. Goodbye. Nope. Not happening in my life. My mindset, I look around some people and I'm like, I feel so sorry for you. I feel so sorry that you have had this driven into you. Like, my mom was one of them. And I literally told her, I'm like, stop watching the damn news. Turn it off. Don't watch it. I'm going to come steal your power cord. Like, you just need to stop, because I mean, it was crazy. Yeah. It was like a spell. Like, people have been put into a spell of watching this. And I'm like, I'm not letting that negative word in my life. I go to work, I come home, I do my job, take care of my kids, we do schoolwork, we do our stuff. Any of that negative stuff is just, it's not there. Like, I legit, taking that out of the equation, I don't feel like my life has really changed a whole lot. Are there some things we can't go do? I have to wear a mask when I go places. But I mean, all in all, I don't have that fear in my life. It's not there. I have been living my life normally. And like, sometimes I'm like, oh, people are like, oh yeah, right, whatever, say that. And I might seem like overly confident or like an asshole saying that, because some people's lives have majorly changed and it has affected people. And I've been around people that affected it, but I've not let that negativity set in my mind to make me live in fear. I'm going to live my life. I have one life and I'm going to live it.
I love
That's
that.
awesome.
Amazing. Does anybody else want to share for number two?
I kind of want to share. I feel like to Neil, like positive words is definitely something like a gift of mine, and always like spinning it to winning it has been something I've been able to do. And our words are our gifts, like through our experiences. So through everything we've been through, we're able to share with others the wisdom that we've learned through our words. So I think that's a gift.
Wow, Brittany, our experiences. I never even thought of that. Like how amazing what you've been through has been totally different than what have I've been through. But if I share what I've been through, you know, maybe when you get there, you're like, oh yeah, I remember Tennille talking about this. And I remember what helped her get through it. Love that. I love the experience and sharing that and being like a full circle. So cool.
Well, let's go ahead and jump to number 3, if that's okay with everyone. Let me reread this because, whew, this was a tough one. I don't know, for me. Can you think of an agreement you have made with your word in the past that you're willing to share? And when Tennille and I were kind of discussing some questions before I sent them to y'all on Friday, she mentioned that, you know, we want to try to keep everything positive as possible for our little discussion. And all that came to mind on this number 3 were negative examples. And I was like, no, I'm going to find a good one. I'm going to find a positive one. So I did, and I want to share it. And hopefully it resonates with some of you, because I know a lot of you are teachers. So in the book, they talk about how other people's opinions that get said out loud to you can become your thoughts, can become your word and your agreement. And then that becomes true in your mind. And all growing up, like I had always wanted to be a teacher since I was like in middle school. And I don't know why, it was just like a feeling. I had a lot of educators in my family. So I don't know, I always just said it was like in my blood. But I heard a couple of people say, like when I was kind of finishing up college, and it was actually my father and actually my father-in-law as well. And I'm sure you've heard it before, but they said, those who can't do, teach. I'm sure lots of you have heard that quote, and I have like so many mixed feelings about that. I'll say it again, those who can't do, teach. So it's, and many people in, at least in the United States, have this perception that like teachers are people who tried to like make it big and then it didn't happen. And so they like fell flat and they're like, okay, I'll just teach other people how to do it. Like so many people have that perspective. And it was like put in my mind, and it made me not want to be a teacher for a little bit. But I had been wanting to be a teacher since I was in middle school. Like, why would I let? So anyway, so I had heard that quote a couple of times, like those who can't do, teach. And then when I was at Tiffin University studying Spanish, I was like, okay, yeah, maybe I shouldn't be a teacher. Like I started to let all those, you know, everybody else's opinion affect what I truly wanted to do. And and then I started like interviewing I wanted to have an interview with the FBI to become like a Spanish translator. And I had like all these like big dreams and big goals. But like at the end of the day, I always came back down to, no, I want to be a teacher. But like there was like this negative connotation floating around it. So one day, I don't know when it was, I can't give you a day, can't give you a year, but I decided like in my mind that I am an educator. Like that's just who I am and that's who I want to be. I'm a nurturer, I'm a supporter, and I can speak Spanish. I have helped people survive an airport trip when they didn't speak the language. Like, so I'm just like, that was in my mind like forever. Like I had other people telling me that, yeah, you're just going to be a teacher because you can't quite do it like in the real world. So you just have to go teach everybody else how to do it. I know you guys have heard that quote before, and people still think it to this day. And and maybe that's the case for some people, like maybe they couldn't make it big, so they just fell back on teaching. But for me, like personally, I made an agreement with myself, like that's who I am. My grandmother was a wonderful educator. My uncle was a wonderful guidance counselor. It's in my blood. And I truly feel like that's who I am. And so I made an agreement someday in my life that I was okay with being a teacher. I was okay with being an educator because I was good at it. And it wasn't just because I couldn't do it in the real world. I don't know. So I tried to find a positive one, but man, I had a lot of negative ones come to mind. So I don't know. I don't know if anybody else has some they would like to share maybe.
I'll go ahead and share. Becky, and I love that. I've never heard that quote. Never. And it's so crazy because you just said, like being a teacher wasn't a big deal, or you said you might have used different words. But wow, teachers have such an impact in this world. It is crazy. I send my kids to school and they're with their teachers for what? 7 hours? Like, it's crazy how much impact you teachers have on these kids in this world. So it's not a little job. It's not something that's not needed here. It's not something small. It is a big, big, huge need. And I'm glad you went through with it. That's awesome. But I would like to share a past agreement that I'm willing to share is my learning disability. I mean, you girls wouldn't have known unless I would tell you, but I have a learning disability. I'm very dyslexic. I was in special classes all through school. I was told by several teachers, several coaches, you will never go to college. You know, you're not capable of going to college. You will never play sports in school, in college. That's not for you. So I had a very positive mother that was, and Mary Kay drove the pink Cadillac, and she spoke to women and empowered women every single day. And I watched her do this. Not only did she empower women, she empowered me and all her kids as well. So as an empowering mother, she spoke words into me that gave me the confidence to not listen to all the negative words and all the negative sound around me, that I am capable of going to college. I am capable of playing volleyball in college. And I do. I have a college degree. I'm a stay-at-home mom, but I have a college degree. And as much as I was told I couldn't do it because somebody put a title on me with a learning disability, and here I am today running a book club, like, you have to overpower those negative words. Like, you have to think something positive to overcome that negativity. You're going to have negative people your whole life. People don't like when other people become successful. I mean, some people do. Yes, your circle does, but you're going to have those negative people your entire life. We have to learn how to overcome them, and we have to learn, and we have to decide on what we're going to listen to and what we're not going to listen to. Because if I would have listened to that, I wouldn't be where I am today. So that was my my positivity word from my past that I wanted to share with you girls, that we're capable of anything. So would anyone else like to share?
That was beautiful, Tennille. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that was a hard question when I wrote it. I remember thinking like, ooh, I don't know. That's a hard one. And it is almost 9 o'clock, so maybe we can wrap it up unless anybody else would love to share. I love hearing the specific examples because, you know, like when you're reading, your mind just goes in so many directions and so many places. And so I love when we jot down notes and then you can share what was in your mind when you're reading. So, but we can wrap it up if anybody else. Oh, Tessa, you got something?
Yes, I do. If my dog will leave me alone, she's such a brat. So I guess this one, mine kind of goes back to how Brittany talked about experiences. So I have lost 2 children, and I could have went down a very dark, I mean, even I lost my daughter first, and that was really, really hard. I could have went into a black hole. And I thought to myself, how can I help other women that this happens to? My experience at the hospital and with the doctor was not very good. And then 3 years later, I lost my son. And I have taken those of what could have been very, very negative experiences in my life. And I could have went to a really dark place with those. And my whole thing was, I've always been a very strong-willed person. And I know that I'm strong. I tell myself all the time, you are strong. That is the one thing, no matter anything of what I ever say to myself, I am strong. I can deal with it. I've dealt with a lot in my life and I've survived it. I'm like, you are a survivor. You will get through it. But I know that there are people out there that are not like that. They can't deal with it. They can't handle it. They can't move through it. And that was my biggest thing on that is, what can I do as a positive to work through that? What can I do to help someone work through that, to get past that, for them telling themselves, I'm not going to get through this. I'm not going to survive this. And it's, a lot of homes are broken because of it. A lot of women, a lot of men don't talk about it. It's something that they don't talk about. So to be able to reach out and be that positive influence on them, to make them realize, like, you will get through it. Days are going to suck and it's not always going to be easy. And in 10 years, it may smack you in the face again, because there's always going to be something there to remind you. But to push past that and not let somebody, losing kids, especially, the biggest thing that I hate, and I cannot stand to hear people say it to people, is, well, it happened for a reason. There must have been a reason for it to happen. Or, well, you can always try again. No, don't tell that to somebody. Like, it is an experience I don't wish on anybody, but it is an experience that I've went through, so I can give a heads up of, you know, this is what to expect. This is what's going to happen. This is how it is. Reach out to me if that's what you're going to do, and to use my word in that way to be that positive, because that is an experience that I had to help someone work through it. Because I really did think about the whole, how, like, you could have went to a very negative place for it, but mine was, you know, it was a negative. It was a really hard negative in my life that I turned into a positive. But that was a hard freaking question, because my immediate thought was, oh, like, well, that sucked and that sucked and that sucked. And like, it was a really hard question.
Yeah, thank you for sharing, Tessa, because I feel like sometimes people look at our past and feel like they can't share about our past, or feel, I don't know, you know, it's just our experience that we've gone through in life can help so many other women. And you have to be okay with sharing it, but it's hard to share sometimes. It's hard to open ourselves up. And I respect you so much of you opening up and being able to share that, because I'm sure there's other women on the team that have went through that experience, but are so scared to share it, or don't feel comfortable sharing it yet. So hearing that from you, I'm sure helps. So thank you. Would anyone else like to share?
One last little thing, Tessa, it is so interesting when you do share about it, because my mom has lost her first child, carried him full term, had him, and he ended up being a stillborn. And all my life, she never talked about it. I barely even know that his name was Walter. Like, that's one fact. That's the only thing that I even really know about it. Because my mom had 3 healthy children after that. And I think people just assume you're supposed to just kind of like move on. You have 3 healthy children. Like, what's your problem? How can you be so and it's just weird to me, because I just think, I'm like, Mom, like, how many times do you think about him that you never spoke of them? Because I can only imagine it's probably all the time. I mean, I would think it would be, especially if you're not speaking about it. It's probably, and you know, this is almost, let's see, I'm 32, so he would have been like 38. because my brother's 36, and so like he was older than my brother, and so it's just like for the last 40 years my mom has never really spoke about it. And just when I hear you speak about it, it's like I forget about it, you know, with my mom. But then when you speak about it, she's always the first person I think about. And I just wonder, like, Mom, you were just so silent for like, and still are, for years and years. And it just kind of like, it makes you realize how many people really are sitting out there with pain that we know nothing about. They will not speak of it. And they're just going to have to live with that on their heart. And like, it's interesting how society has like suppressed that and encouraged it. Like, ooh, don't talk about that. Like, ooh, those feelings are icky. Like, we're not going to talk about that. That's too uncomfortable. That's too much for me, you know, like, let's keep it happy and simple. But then yet like our news is like full of fear. And like, it's so interesting when you start to like break this stuff down of like what we choose is okay to talk about versus what is not okay to talk about. And like, I think that like the more that we speak up about the stuff that people say is like taboo or like whatever, I think that, but that's the more real stuff. Like this is the real life stuff that's happening that no one's talking about. And so I'm really proud of you. And I love whenever, every time you speak up about it, because it opens my eyes. It reminds me, it makes me think of something that maybe isn't super pleasant for me to think about, you know, but it's important for me to think about. And I think that's like what I really love about this book in general is it makes you think about stuff. Maybe you have kind of, I don't want to think about that. That's too hard. That's too da da da. That's, you know, and it kind of like brings that stuff back up and you're like, let's talk about it. Let's bring it up. Let's bring that to the front so we can work through it or use it for something else other than self-destruction. You know, that's what I think is like, how can I take this taboo or something that's being shoved down or unspeakable or whatever, and how can I take it and make it a positive for me, you know? And so I always really appreciate when you speak up about it. I would love to hear more.
Thank you. And I think that's what it is it's such a taboo subject. And over years, like you've made that agreement with yourself that because it's a taboo subject and it makes people uncomfortable. You've made that agreement with yourself. I'm not going to talk about it because I don't want to make them uncomfortable. But in turn, you are killing yourself inside to not talk about it because it is something that, as uncomfortable as it is to talk about, you have to talk about it. You cannot keep it in because it will slowly kill you. But a lot of people have made that agreement that it's going to make other people uncomfortable for me to speak my word and to speak my truth. So now I have to keep silent. And that is why women get severely depressed. It's why women will commit suicide, or even men, because it does affect them differently. But I mean, I think a lot of it is seen as it's a woman thing, but I mean, it goes both ways. And I think that is that's an agreement that was made, and that was an agreement that I chose. I'm not making that agreement with myself. I'm making this agreement with myself to share it. I'm not making the agreement to keep quiet and keep silent.
Boom. Oh, awesome. I'm gonna wrap it up. So the last thing that I want to mention is at the beginning of my book, when I had impeccable, I just said not liable to sin. And the back of the book, when it the last sentence, be impeccable with your words, I wrote down free. Be so freeing with your words that you don't hardly have to think before speaking. Okay, you should be so positively developed that you don't have to stop talking to make sure you're saying the right things. So let's try to be free. Let's work on being very free with our words and speak that positivity into our children, our husbands, our friends, and our family. Okay. Thank you, ladies, for showing up this morning. chapter 2 in the books. Woohoo! So we will read chapter 3 this week and meet again on Sunday for our sit and sip. Thank you for coming. See you later. Have a good Sunday.